The Korean War is often referred to as the Forgotten War. It came after the end of World War II and prior to the beginning of the Vietnam War. Both wars seem to garner a great deal of media, and with good reason. But the Korean War, fought from June 1950 to July 1953, and generally referred to as a police action, gets less attention. But the men who fought and died there are no less deserving of the same recognition as those who fought in wars prior and wars since. One of the more interesting accounts that came out of the fighting in Korea occurred when a group of Navy Seabees pulled off a daring mission to liberate a train behind enemy lines, a train filled with beer. The Seabees are a specialized unit of the United States Navy that was created during World War II. Their primary mission is to provide construction and engineering support to military operations, including building bases, roads, and other infrastructure. During the Korean War, the Seabees were called upon to support the United Nations forces in their fight against the North Koreans and the Chinese. In September 1950, United States Marines, along with a battalion of Seabees, made a successful landing at Incheon, South Korea, with the objective of reaching Seoul. 9 days into the advance, an aerial observer reported that 8 switch locomotives were trapped by broken rails in the small town of Yongdong-po. Led by Chief Petty Officer E.A. Sidney, a Seabee veteran and former railroad man, a group of 8 Seabees volunteered to go behind enemy lines and commandeer the train that was believed to be carrying supplies and troops. The locomotives would be a great asset to the United States troop efforts on their way to Seoul. The Seabees traveled by foot for several miles until they reached the town of Yongdong-po, where they found the train they were looking for at the Kurin Brewery. Once there was no time to waste. Chief Sidney made the command decision to load 15 cases of beer and sake onto the train. Without a doubt, the beer and sake would be an invaluable asset to the war effort. Once aboard the train, the Seabees fired up the locomotive boilers and began the trek back to their lines. On the way, they came upon damaged track that was unpassable. Now, rather than abandon the mission, the Seabees repaired the rail lines so that the locomotives could pass. Again, the fate of 15 cases of beer and sake were at stake, and of course, winning the war. Once on the move again, the Seabees encountered some resistance from the North Koreans, who fired on them with small arms and mortars. With shrapnel bouncing off the locomotive cabs and the boilers, the Seabees ducked, but kept chugging along back towards the Marine lines. As they got closer to their destination, the Marines who were guarding the U.S. lines saw the locomotives and initially thought that they were being operated by enemy troops. The Marines of the 1st Division began firing on the trains until a young private noticed that the men on the train were wearing green fatigues with a GI cut. He yelled out, "Hold your fire!" The private initially thought that the locomotives were being operated by doggies, meaning other Marines, but was quickly corrected by his sergeant, who said, "Naw, it's just them damn Seabees at it again." The Seabee chief later admitted that the beer and sake may have encouraged the Seabees to greater effort in getting the trains back to safety. It is unknown what happened to the beverages on board, as the official record does not say. I guess we'll never know. The Great Seabee Train Robbery, while a humorous story, is a testament to the bravery and resourcefulness of the Seabees during the Korean War. Despite facing enemy fire and other obstacles, the Seabees were able to complete their mission and bring the locomotives back to the U.S. lines. The Seabees continued to play an important role in the Korean War, providing construction and engineering support to the United Nations forces. But for all the courage and work they performed during the remaining years of the war, it's hard to beat a story about stealing a train full of beer. If you enjoy learning about this little-known piece of history, click the screen now to learn 15 things you didn't know about Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb. And if you'd like to support our work here, please subscribe and like this video. Until next time, I'm Dennis Gill for Revealing History.